I'm Danielle Walter. Thank you so much for being here today. This interview, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. You are welcome to refuse to answer if you don't want to answer some of that. And usually it takes about 15 minutes. Okay, so my first question for you is, in your opinion, what do you think will take your community, the community that you work with, the longest to recover from COVID?
I think socially everyone is really affected. So I think I've noticed, like, when it comes to work, after work, it was easy to just say, oh, do you want to go grab coffee or do you want to go grab a drink? And, like that was just a normal thing. People do that like once a week at least, or go out to lunch even like during. I've noticed a lot of people like eat lunch alone, or they don't want to go out anywhere after work, or they just, they're just not, they don't even keep up with like work friend relationships in the same way. And it makes me sad because I'm a pretty social person. And I'm not that way, but I've definitely noticed it. So I think, I don't know how that's going to return, but I think that's what's going to take the longest.
Interesting. That's really helpful. And I've noticed that too, sure. Yeah. So my next question asks if you have been vaccinated, which I think you must have been because you're here today. But I'm interested because we needed that.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, what was your main reason for getting vaccinated?
My kids. I want to keep them as safe as possible. Other family too that's like vulnerable, but my daughter has asthma. And plain and simple, it wasn't really a question. It was as far as like, when can I do it?
Yeah.
And then, when can I get the booster? It's like, you know what I mean? Wasn't really a question. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. So where did you go for information about the COVID vaccine? What sources do you trust?
To be honest, it was word of mouth. So I don't know, people just were talking about it and like, oh, did you get your vaccine yet? And I was like, no, I didn't get it yet. I'm scheduling it. And people just willingly offered the information. So it wasn't like I didn't have to go searching for it, which I recognize is not the case for everyone. But yeah, they were just like, oh yeah, you're gonna go over to the mall, and there's like they turned the whole mall into like a vaccine center. It's real easy to schedule. Like, yeah. So.
That's cool. So, in your experience, what are some of the barriers or challenges to getting the vaccine? What did you see at the beginning as some of the biggest issues, and did those change?
I do know there were limited. They were limited to people who didn't have insurance. You mean me personally or just in general? Yeah, I did notice that. I was fortunate to have insurance, so I didn't have that hurdle. I think overall it was pretty easy. I don't recall it being very difficult at all, actually. I think people were very much encouraging people to get their vaccines. I mean, they had like a whole center set up for it. So, yeah.
Is there anything that you could think of that might have made it easier for people?
Yeah, it would have been easier, I think, if they, like, I don't know, pushed it more on social media. Not pushed it, but like talked about it more on social media, because I think the audience that I don't think got as vaccinated are like college kids and like late high school kids. Because it's like, it's their choice. Like if they're 18, then they decide, their parents aren't taking them in. And, they can be, I think in general, they are a little flippant with their health in general. They don't understand that their life has a time clock, you know what I mean? So I think, not to bash anyone in any age group, but I think that, that age bracket, I think it's almost like doing them a disservice by not taking the information to the platforms that they use.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that is definitely the invincibility age.
Yeah.
Right. How do you think that state or local organizations could contribute, or what could they do so that more people would have more confidence in the vaccine and make it more of a priority for themselves?
Yeah, I think that was never really done well. I think that, in my opinion, what should have been done, similar to policing, in my opinion, is you use people from the community. So, and not use, that's probably a bad word, but basically you educate. I think that what the government should have done was educate local authority, like local authorities. And when I say authorities, I don't mean the police, I mean like authorities of influence. And then once they are educated on the vaccine, they can then educate their community, not push it or like one side or the other, but like offer information. So once like I think creating like competence within those like community leaders would have been step one. And then it would have been a natural, like naturally we want to care for our people. So naturally it would have been like, I have this helpful information. I understand it. I need to understand it too. It would have just seemed more versus like, there's so much distrust within a lot of officials, like state officials, like government. And so it's a missed opportunity because some people are just not going to listen simply because of where the message is coming from.
Yep. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. So what, I know that you work in communications. So what do you think that some of our public health and healthcare officials could do differently in their communication strategies? Like more specific, I mean, you gave two really awesome examples. Are there any other things that they could do, like style of message or anything like that?
I think authenticity is just the best way to go when it comes to that, especially when it comes to state officials on that level, because there is a lack of trust. It's just, I think that's always going to be the biggest hurdle. And so when their audience sees them just being completely transparent, like admitting that they are also nervous, admitting that they don't know everything. These are not just tactics. This is like, if that's being a human and showing up as a human being is honestly, I think probably their best way to go as far as strategy goes, because they're dealing with people and people trust people. People trust people who are open and vulnerable and honest about where they are. I'm really nervous about getting the vaccine, but it's the best thing for me to do for my family. So I've made the decision to do it, and this is why. Versus statistics say this and statistics say that, and we're all trying to get herd immunity and all of these things that, like, absolutely, that is the goal.
Yeah.
And that's a more informational, matter of fact kind of message, but then also coming from like a real authentic place, I think will show another side to them that people resonate.
So do you feel like we had like facts, like, we're working towards herd immunity, it's safe, it's this, but we're missing the authenticity, or we only had one kind of authenticity that maybe wasn't so encouraging of vaccine?
Oh no, I don't think we actually had authenticity. I think what we had was judgment and trying to like coerce people into making a certain decision. And I think that's very different than coming from a vulnerable, authentic place.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, did you have an opportunity to talk to any healthcare providers about the COVID vaccine?
No. Oh, wait, yes, I did. I talked to my doctor about it briefly, and they seemed kind of indifferent. Honestly, whether I got it or not. They were like, if you want it, I can administer it. If you don't, that's fine. And yeah, and then I ended up going not through my doctor. But yeah, they kind of seemed indifferent. They didn't offer actually, not that thing about it. like any guidance one way or the other. I also, so to clarify, I also go to like a private clinician with like shoot, what's the word? Drawing a blank, like concierge medicine, basically. So I do self-pay concierge medicine. And so I love it because I can call my doctor whenever I want, I can call like for my kids and stuff like that whenever I want. Very personable, all that kind of stuff. Doesn't go through insurance, you know what I mean? Like I have insurance for like if I need to get testing and all that kind of stuff. But like by like having like this like family situation with her, it's just a lot more. It's interesting. It's a lot more care and concern, especially when it comes to my kids. I was really struggling with pediatricians just not caring about my kids, just genuinely like shoving me off and like making just making light of things that I really felt like stressed about. Like, you know, my kid had like a whole eczema breakout like all over their body. And it was right after they got a vaccine for vaccination, something else, like you know, the normal baby vaccinations. And I was freaking out. And then they were just like, it's nothing, it's just eczema. And at the time I was like, are you sure? Like they ran no tests, they sent me home. They like, you know, pushed it off, you know, and eventually I just got frustrated and yeah, decided that that wasn't the move. But you know, when it comes to when it came to the vaccine, she kind of just I think she maybe just didn't want to be pushy or like have input. So she just kind of like let me make the decision. And since my kids are not at vaccinating age, I think it wasn't a discussion.
Feels really bad.
Yeah, well, I feel like going with your gut, like as a mom, is super important. And I don't care how crazy I look. If at the end of the day, if my kids need something and I'm not a doctor, so I can't provide them with medical support. So I go to the professionals. They, to me, I'm like, y'all need to listen because there's a problem, you know? And, you know, I just think they just were like, they just shove off, especially younger moms. Like, I'm not, you know, like I think once you get to like maybe 40 or something, maybe there's a little more respect or something, but they just kind of like shove you off. And I think also I live in a predominantly white area, and I think that was also some of it. I had no practitioners of color, and so yeah, that was also.
Sounds like made smart. Sorry that you. Good. So really good segue to the next question is, do you think all communities in New Jersey have been given equal access to information about the vaccine and the vaccine itself?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Who's been left?
Yeah, I think. I mean, it's the obvious answer, right? Like we all know, like people of color, people who are disenfranchised, definitely people who are living on the margins, definitely people who are undocumented, or I would even say non-English speaking people. All of those groups of people, I think, are just not valued or prioritized. And so their humanity is not valued and prioritized. So their life is not valued and prioritized. So why are we trying to then save their life and provide them with information that can possibly avoid them from getting terminally ill? Like it makes sense in the sick logic of how this country works in a lot of ways. And that's exactly why I would say, of course they were not given adequate information. You know, that would be a shock to me if all of a sudden they were just like, we need to make sure we're going into, you know, disenfranchised areas, making sure that each one of them knows where they can go and get to that. Like, no.
Yeah. So that is very helpful, and the sad truth of the world. So, and that's the end of my questions. Is there anything else that you think is important to share about your vaccine experience or what you've noticed about other people's vaccine experience?
Okay, I will share something
Okay, great.
because, well, I don't know. You don't have to include this. You don't have to. But so I wasn't a person who was about to go and just like, I didn't want to discourage anyone from getting the vaccine. Ultimately, I believe that we should all be vaccinated. I really do believe that. But I did have like weird side effects from the vaccine. And it like, so I got my first dose, and it was like the normal, like, it's a little bit. And the second dose, I didn't like get sick or anything. Like some people said they got really sick for like, a few days after. But ever since I've gotten it, like my menstrual cycle has not been the same. It's like every other month. It's really weird. It's like forever changed to every other month. So it's like not, I don't know. It's not even like it's inconsistent. It's just
Consistently like that.
consistently every other month.
Not bad though, I'll say.
And I'm like, well, yeah. I'm not complaining because I technically get like 2 for the price of 1 kind of thing, But then when it does come, it's like supremely like horrible. Like it's like really painful and just awful. That's one thing. For sure. That's just like weird to me. But like, I don't know what that means. Like I feel like something in my body is jacked up then because of that. But I don't know. I feel like that's not something I'm not like posting that on social media or
Yeah.
well, I think at this point it would be different. Like sharing it to people at this point would be different. You're in a different place. But when I got vaccinated, it was like for the first time, it was still very like people were skittish.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, like this is weird, but I also don't feel. I feel like if I share this, people can take it out of context and like be like, you see.
Yeah.
And so I didn't share it, but like I've always wondered like what are the like lifelong implications of the vaccine, and are they better or worse than like the lifelong implications of getting COVID? I've never actually gotten COVID. Knock on wood, wherever there is wood, but I've never gotten it. But I know that I know that people who have gotten COVID have like effects that they say they'll have like for the rest of their lives. And I'm like, that's interesting. Just in general, COVID has changed our lives forever on multiple levels. And I guess physically, like it's just another way.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, I've heard that from other people too. I think generally speaking, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. But it's probably still better than COVID.
Yeah. That's my gut feeling because we've seen
COVID kills people.
Yeah.
And disables people. Young, healthy people. And it doesn't seem to have like a reason why it picks that person.
Right.
I feel like there's luck involved.
There's gotta be because it's like, I mean, even when you'll see 2 people living under the same roof, one will get COVID, one won't, and I'm like, how's it work? What is it about the other person?
Yeah.
That like they just are like immune. So I don't know.
Yeah. I have 4 kids and a husband, and me and one of my sons never had it. Everybody else has. It's not weird.
Yeah.
And the one is a twin. He lives has a bunk bed with his, So like, how do you do that? Like,
I know. I don't get it.
yeah. So I think there's luck. I can't explain it any other way.
Yeah,
that's okay. Anyway, do you have any questions for me? Well, it's been a real pleasure talking with you today. I really appreciate your time.